Welcome to Random Movie Reviews. I'm Nathan, and today I'll be talking about Point Break. Well, this review has been a long time coming. A few videos back, I did a video talking about Heat. And in that video, I specifically mentioned that I believe that that film in particular is the gold standard of all cops and robbers movies. And I also mentioned in that video that there is a movie that is very definitively right behind Heat as my favorite in that specific genre, and that is the movie Point Break. Now, the reasons why I love Point Break and the reasons why I love Heat are very, very different. When it comes to the movie Heat, I love the dramatic storytelling, I love the pacing of the movie, the stark and cold atmosphere, how the characters are dissected in a very emotionally satisfying way, and it's just a genuinely really intelligent and thought-provoking thriller. Now, when it comes to Point Break, it's kind of like the polar opposite of Heat in terms of a movie that you take seriously. It is incredibly campy and over-the-top and downright cheesy in terms of the premise of the movie, in terms of like the performances and all of the stuff, which we're going to get into. And of course, the dialogue in the movie, which at times is completely outrageous.
Hey, you're a real Blue Flame special, aren't you, son? Young, dumb, and full of cum.
Listen, you snot nose little shit! I was taking shrapnel and K-Sod while you were crapping in your hands and rubbing it on your face!
Back off, war child, seriously.
They only live to get radical.
Speak into the microphone, squid brain.
Utah, give me two. I know it's hard for you, Johnny. I know you want me so bad it's like acid in your mouth.
But there's one aspect of Point Break that is very not cheesy at all, and that is the action.
Yes! That's awesome!
The action in Point Break, directed by Kathryn Bigelow, is some of the best action in any movie ever, and I firmly stand by it. And keep in mind, this movie came out in 1991, it was filmed in 90, and prior to Point Break, there weren't that many action movies that looked as incredible as many of the action sequences that you see in Point Break, specifically in regards to the surfing sequences, the skydiving sequences, and of course the iconic on-foot chase in this movie, which is one of the greatest chase scenes in film history. Kathryn Bigelow has gone on to direct very serious historical thriller dramas like Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30, and Detroit. But her career started off doing these really awesome genre movies, with Near Dark being one of her earliest films, her horror movie, and then she did Point Break, and then she did Strange Days, a movie that I've talked about on this channel, which I'll link in the description below. I should watch her later movies because I haven't seen any of those films and see how I feel about them and kind of do like a contrast and compare to like her earlier stuff. But Point Break is one of those movies that I just don't really get sick of watching, and before I get into the specifics and reasons as to why that is, let's just do a brief overview of the plot. So Point Break centers around ex-college football star turned undercover FBI agent Johnny Utah, who is tasked with the veteran officer Angelo, played by Gary Busey, and together they are looking to stop a new gang of bank robbers that are incredibly efficient and amazing at what they do, known as the ex-presidents. Angelo has a theory based on some forensic evidence that they found, as well as the time of year that the ex-presidents always hits up these banks, and the fact that there is a tan line on one of the ex-presidents that was very noticeable. And his theory is that these guys are surfers, and they're looking to finance all of their surfing and extreme sports activities through robbing these banks. And they have a very particular method where they only steal from the tellers and never from the vault, and they're in and out 90 seconds, no questions asked. So based on this theory, Angelo convinces Johnny Utah to go undercover as a surf dude bro. But first he needs to learn how to surf, and that's when we get introduced to the main romantic interest of this movie, Tyler, played by Lori Petty. And Utah gives her this very elaborate backstory about how he's a lawyer who's looking to get away from his, stiff working environment, and that he's orphaned just like Tyler is, and he knows this based on looking her up in a police file. And so he persuades Tyler to teach him how to surf. And along the way, he ends up getting introduced to Bodie, an ex-boyfriend of Tyler, who's kind of a local surfing legend. Of course, his name is short for the Bodhisattva.
That's Bodhi. They call him the Bodhisattva.
The second romantic interest in this movie. So Utah and Bodhi are bonding. Utah is captivated by Bodhi, finds him fascinating in his kind of like look on life, and he's meeting his friends and stuff like that, who's giving him insight about the spiritual side of surfing, as well as the male-dominated world of adrenaline junkies, which is kind of a big theme in this movie, which I'll talk a little bit about later. So at first, Johnny and Angelo believe that they found their group of surfers, one of which is Anthony Kiedis from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. These 4 guys match the description of the ex-presidents and the fact that they all have very long and extensive criminal histories. They believe this is the gang that they're looking for. But after a raid gone horribly wrong in one of the more awesome sequences in the movie...
All I want to know, smart guy, okay? All I want to know. Saw these guys robbing Tarzana City National Bank on August 2nd when they were in Fort fucking Lauderdale August 2nd. Why don't you figure that out?
They're now back to square one, like, okay, well, who are these ex-presidents? Where are these 4 guys? And, who could it possibly be? And that's when Utah has a revelation that, oh, you know what? It just might be Bodhi and his 3 buddies, because 4 guys, one of them has a tan line and likes to moon a lot of things, which is another key clue throughout the film. And that's when we get one of the most iconic scenes in the movie. Utah and Angelo are scoping out one of the banks that they believe the ex-presidents are going to hit next, and lo and behold, they find him, they chase after him, the car breaks down, and Utah runs on foot going after Bodhi. And what is probably the best on-foot chasing sequence in a movie, or at least in the top 5, like easily. It's so unbelievably well filmed. And then we get the most iconic scene in the movie, which I referenced at the beginning of this video with Hot Fuzz, with Utah wanting to shoot Bodhi, knowing that it's him, but he just can't do it because he's gotten too close to him. And this all culminates into a terrific third act of the movie where Tyler discovers that Utah lied about his past and that he is an FBI agent. She goes running off, and Bodhi and his gang shows up, and they try to persuade Utah to go skydiving, even though he has an incredibly injured knee. Then we get another amazing sequence, probably the best skydiving sequence in film history, or at least right up there with Mission Impossible Fallout with the Halo jump. And then after that incredible moment that is genuinely transcendent in the way that it's filmed, Utah now realizes he's been trapped out in the middle of nowhere with Bodhi and his gang, and he shows him that one of his other members, Rosie, kidnapped Tyler and is holding her captive because they know that he's an undercover agent, and so they're looking to get him to rob a bank with them so he can get framed and they can be let off the loose. But of course the bank robbery goes wrong because Bodhi, being the adrenaline junkie that he is and not knowing where the edge is, decides to go for the vault, which they never do. And that's when an undercover cop and a security guard try to take control of the situation. Ends in a bloodbath, with both of them getting killed and one of the other members of the gang getting killed and another one getting fatally injured. Angelo comes to rescue Utah. They go after the ex-presidents. Another shootout ensues where Angelo gets shot. Johnny gets on the plane. Bodhi and the last member of his crew go skydiving, which, by the way, that scene where Patrick Swayze legitimately falls out of the plane, one of the coolest shots like in a movie ever. And then we get the second coolest shot in a movie ever where Utah screams fuck it and jumps out of the plane without a parachute, going after Bodhi, tackling him midair, trying to do that thing, pull the cord first. Utah decides a little too late, pulls the cord, they boom, smashing into the ground, injuring his knee again. His knee really gets fucked up throughout this movie. Bodhi decides to show mercy by letting Tyler go because he already got the money, and although pretty much all of his gang is dead, him and Rosie just drive off, and we believe that Bodhi escaped until we find out about a couple months later, Utah tracks Bodhi in Bells Beach, Australia, which was set up earlier in the film about how Bodhi's biggest dream is to catch the 50-year storm and ride the biggest waves in history. They engage in some hand-to-hand combat. Little does Bodhi know it's an ambush and that Utah did not come alone and that there's the whole FBI and the cops are there to capture Bodhi. But then Bodhi convinces Utah to let him go because this is basically his last wave. He's basically gonna die doing what he loves, which is once again kind of a theme throughout this movie. Utah's like, all right, unlocks the cuffs, says via con Dios, lets Bodhi go, and the cops are like, you let him escape, and he's like, no, I didn't. Bodhi gets immediately wiped out by a giant wave, and then Utah very awesomely throws his FBI badge in the water, and cue the Rat song. And that is Point Break, pretty much the entire movie right there. And, the premise and the plot is absolutely absurd. And some of the performances are, perfectly over the top, match the tone of the movie very well, like Patrick Swayze's performance and Gary Busey in particular. And I would also throw in Lori Petty as well. Keanu Reeves, this is, him trying to break free from kind of the Bill and Ted archetype where he's looking to do more of serious action acting, but, it comes off as a bit very early Keanu Reeves-ish.
Bodie, this is your fucking wake-up call, man. I am an FBI agent!
But once again, that adds to the charm of the movie, and that's why this movie's gone on to have such a huge cult following. Some people may not even know that Point Break has a cult following not that unlike of Rocky Horror Picture Show, because there's some places, particularly in Los Angeles, where they do theater performances of Point Break.
I am an FBI agent! I'm an FBI agent!
The bank robberies spill into the audience and out into the street. And fake blood spatters cringing spectators. Gary Busey stopped by one night to add to the chaos.
Now, yes, most people view this movie as kind of just a fun, nonsense, escapist type of movie, but I believe there is more depth to this movie than people realize. I believe there is a legitimate examination of the male-dominated world of adrenaline junkies, and I think the fact that Kathryn Bigelow, being a female director, showing these men like who are addicted to this extreme lifestyle, who are always looking to find the edge, but are always in danger of accidentally going over the edge, I think the way she examines that through her filmmaking is really genuine.
He's a real searcher.
What's he searching for?
The ride. The ultimate ride.
And it gives the movie a surprising amount of substance if you look for it. Utah gets seduced into this world of surfing, and he really loves it, and this is like, it's become like a passion of his. But Bodie, who's someone who's been in this world for quite some time, in terms of like the adrenaline-fueled extreme sports world, him and his gang of characters, they're always looking for the ultimate ride, right? That's kind of the main driving force for these guys. And Tyler, the only female character in this movie, is the only one smart enough to see like how insane these guys are behaving, and she calls it out a few times during the movie.
There's too much testosterone here. Hope you're not buying into this bonsai bullshit like the rest of Bodie's movies. He'll take you to the edge. Past.
We think at first that they're just robbing these banks in order to fuel all of these activities, but we essentially find out that robbing the bank is part of their ultimate ride. They don't do it just for the money, they do it for the thrill and the rush of it. And that's what makes this movie really interesting to me, is that, there's layers to it. Like, yes, it's campy and it's fun and it's ridiculous, but also the action is extremely well directed, some of the best action sequences of all time as far as I'm concerned. And then there's the commentary on the world of adrenaline junkies and how that's primarily a male-dominated thing, and we see that through the lens of Kathryn Bigelow's filmmaking and as well as Tyler's character. In fact, one can make the argument that this film touches upon themes of what we now refer to as toxic masculinity. But the most important thing is the movie is insanely entertaining. And if you go into it looking for some like no holds barred, fantastic action and a story that's legitimately entertaining and engaging and actually has a surprising amount of substance, like I said, if you kind of look deeper into it, Point Break checks all the marks. And, I have a soft spot for super schlocky, over-the-top action movies, and Point Break ranks very highly as one of my all-time favorites in that genre. So, that's my thoughts on Point Break. I'm kind of obsessed with this movie. It's one of my favorite movies ever. It's so fun. It's so ridiculous. I think it's a little bit more intelligent than some people may even realize. But I want to hear from you guys. For those who have seen Point Break, what are your thoughts on it? Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Mention it in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching.